Imagine a Super Bowl where gladiators don't just play for rings, they play for Rome. Where halftime shows involve chariot races, and instead of tailgating, fans chant Latin hymns in full legionnaire armor. In this world, the NFL wasn't born in Canton, Ohio. It was forged on the banks of the Rubicon. But this isn't just spectacle, this is strategy. Because in this alternate timeline, Julius Caesar, general, dictator, and brand genius, has invented American football, not as a game, but as a tool of empire. How? Why? And what does that even mean? To understand this reimagined world, we must begin not in 1920s America, but in the chaotic twilight of the Roman Republic, a time of collapsing norms, ambitious generals, and a civilization hungry for unity through spectacle. Rome was already obsessed with performance. Chariot races drew tens of thousands. Gladiatorial combat was reality TV before cameras. Caesar didn't just fight wars, he performed them. He understood that mass entertainment could be mass persuasion. Now, imagine Caesar applying that thinking to invent a new kind of spectacle, one combining Roman martial precision with theatrical excess, a contest not of random slaughter, but of structured violence, not gladiators, but quarterbacks. This is not merely a mashup of two timelines. This is a philosophical collision between military discipline and modern entertainment. And at the center of it all stands Julius Caesar, not as dictator, but as commissioner. Let's dive in.
The Roman legion was the apex tactical unit of its time, a war machine built on formations, discipline, and coordinated movement. Sound familiar? Because if Caesar designed football, every playbook would begin with the testudo. In our alternate NFL, the huddle isn't just for calling plays, it's a ritualized echo of the Roman contubernium, the eight-man squad that ate, marched, and bled together. Cohesion was sacred. The same would apply here, each team a mobile legion, every play a formation of honor. Offensive lines would function like Roman infantry walls, tight, protective, moving as one. The fullback, a modern-day signifer, leading the charge with both symbolism and brute force. And the quarterback, he's the legate, not just calling audibles, but commanding legions, strategizing like a general, surveying the field like a consul, scanning the battlefield at Pharsalus. Reads and progressions would mirror battlefield decisions, adapt, strike, retreat in seconds. The playbook wouldn't be a binder, it would be a codex, bound in leather, inscribed with Latin. Plays named after provinces, victories, and gods. The Gaul sweep, the Pontic pivot, the Jupiter blitz. Even the halftime adjustments would mirror Roman battlefield councils. Coaches, they'd be tribunes. Assistant coaches, centurions. This Romanized NFL would turn Gridiron into gladiatorial chess, every movement grounded in centuries of imperial conquest. And of course, every game a campaign, every season a war.
Give them bread and circuses, the Roman satirist Juvenal wrote. In Caesar's NFL, that's not a cynical quip, it's a business model. Roman leaders knew one truth. Public loyalty is bought with spectacle. The Colosseum wasn't just for blood, it was a distraction engine, an emotion factory. Now replace lions with linebackers, and you've got the blueprint for a media empire. In this timeline, Caesar doesn't just invent football, he industrializes it. Stadiums become the new forums, each one named after victories. Stadium Elysia, Colosseum Actium, Arena Rubicon. Each game is both warfare and performance, with fans seated not in rows, but in tiers of citizen classes. Senators in skyboxes, plebs in the trenches. But Caesar doesn't stop at live games. No, he creates a new form of state media. Live scrolls written in real time by scribai, proto-sports journalists reporting each drive, each turnover, each divine interception. Later, these evolve into imperial broadcasts, stylized mosaic murals, frescoes depicting famous plays, even traveling bards retelling the highlights in verse. Sponsorship exists, but it's imperial. The olive oil of Hispania, the sandals of Thrace. Caesars understood product placement before Pepsi ever sponsored a halftime show. And yes, there are halftime shows, but they're not pop stars. They're reenactments of Roman myths, live animal hunts, mock sea battles, entertainment as ideology, carefully curated to stoke Roman identity. This is no longer just a league, it's a spectacle economy. Caesar's NFL isn't about football, it's about mass consent. It's about empire disguised as entertainment. And it works.
In our timeline, the NFL draft is a made-for-TV event. Suits, handshakes, highlight reels. In Caesar's NFL, it's a conscription ceremony, equal parts honor and obligation. Young athletes aren't just recruited, they're levied. Scouted from across the empire, from the icy forests of Germania to the deserts of Egypt. Tribes and provinces send their finest, not as citizens, but as tributes. Combine Week? No, Decima trials. Held in the Campus Martius, these brutal tests echo Roman military fitness rituals. Full armor sprints, javelin precision throws, shield endurance holds, not timed in seconds, but measured in Roman virtues, virtus, disciplina, gravitas. Each prospect is evaluated not just on skill, but on loyalty to the imperial brand. Tattooed with unit insignia, sworn into service before the Senate, their names etched into marble draft boards, not for merchandising, but for immortality. The first overall pick, a symbolic role akin to Caesar's primus pilus, the lead centurion, the commander of the commanders. A player who doesn't just lead a team, he represents a province, a people, a legacy. And trades, they're not business, they're diplomacy. A young prospect from Britannia might be exchanged for grain shipments or the promise of future conquests. Draft picks become tools of geopolitics. What we consider sports administration, Caesar transforms into statecraft. The imperial roster isn't just a list of names, it's a map of Rome's reach, a display of its diversity and its control. In the modern NFL, scoring a touchdown brings cheers, high fives, and sometimes a dance. In Caesar's NFL, it earns you a triumph, a ritualized spectacle borrowed from Rome's greatest military tradition. A touchdown isn't just a score, it's a conquest, and the celebration, not a spike, but a procession. After a pivotal play, players don't jog to the sideline, they march down a miniature Via Triumphalis, cheered by citizens, flanked by drummers, and announced by heralds. The ball isn't tossed, it's offered to a statue of Jupiter amid incense and thunderous brass. MVPs aren't handed trophies, they're granted laurel wreaths, paraded through city streets and immortalized in mosaics. Their feats are carved into triumphal arches. Highlight reels become bas-reliefs commissioned by patrons and senators alike. And for the season's champion, a full imperial triumph. Chariots, elephants, captive mascots from rival provinces. Caesar himself, or his commissioner avatar, presides from a balcony, approving the victory with divine gesture. But it's not just about pageantry. These triumphs are deeply political.
Victories are choreographed narratives of Roman dominance, reinforcing the empire's ideology. Every successful play is an allegory, every touchdown a reassertion of imperial destiny. Defeats, conversely, are treated with ritualized shame, not booze, but symbolic exile. A quarterback who fails too often may be publicly stripped of insignia, sent on a redemption campaign, or even reassigned to the Iberian Development League. This isn't just football, it's theater, religion, propaganda. In Caesar's NFL, every yard gained is a step toward divine favor, and every end zone is a miniature Rome waiting to be conquered. In modern football, team owners argue with players over contracts and salary caps. In Caesar's NFL, those negotiations are held in marble chambers under the watchful gaze of the Roman Senate. Yes, even sports are political. Caesar's league isn't ruled by billionaires in luxury boxes. It's governed by senators, praetors, and quaestors, each representing a province, faction, or legacy franchise. Instead of owners, we have patrician sponsors who fund teams in exchange for influence, not profits. The salary cap? It's not a spreadsheet, it's a senatorial decree passed after fierce oratory battles in the Curia. Debates rage over player stipends, bread allowances, and bonus aurii for exceptional valor. Players lobby with rhetoric, not agents. A star wide receiver might address the Senate directly, quoting Cicero to argue for better chariot insurance. Entire player unions form collegia, protected under Roman labor law, but carefully monitored by Caesar's censors. Corruption, of course, runs rampant. Some teams, particularly those from wealthy provinces like Aegyptus or Sicilia, quietly bribe senators to secure favorable rulings. A team on a losing streak might even request a divinatory audit, blaming Saturn's alignment for poor performance. And when scandals erupt, the trials aren't private arbitrations, they're public hearings in the forum, complete with crowd heckling, toga tossing, and dramatic testimony. A deflated ball scandal becomes a full-blown treason case. This system ensures that Caesar's NFL remains inseparable from Rome's governing machine. The league becomes a mirror of the Republic, theatrical, unstable, and perpetually teetering between order and chaos. In this world, every contract negotiation is a political thriller.
Rome never stopped at its own borders, and neither does Caesar's NFL. Expansion is destiny. Enter the Barbarian Bowl. Once a year, a team from outside the empire, Germania, Parthia, Nubia, is invited to play a sanctioned match against an imperial franchise. The stakes? Imperial recognition, maybe even annexation. These barbarian teams are wild cards. They play by different rules, wear unfamiliar armor, and bring strange strategies. Some play barefoot, others wield curved throwing blades instead of pigskin. They are exotic, terrifying, and, to the Roman audience, exhilarating. The Barbarian Bowl is not just a game, it's spectacle meets soft conquest. For Caesar, it's a propaganda weapon, a public demonstration of Roman superiority disguised as open-minded inclusion. But sometimes, the outsiders win. When they do, chaos follows. Senate hearings, debates over whether foreign tactics violated the Lex Ludurum, the sacred laws of the game, murmurs of divine displeasure, calls to purge non-Roman influences from the league. Yet each upset fuels demand. Fans clamor for more inter-civilizational matches, Merchants sell Team Scythia tunics. Philosophers debate whether sport, like empire, must evolve to survive. Eventually, the league expands beyond its borders, reluctantly, then rapidly. New teams from the Silk Road, transatlantic expeditions scouting athletic talent in the far Western Isles. Caesar's NFL becomes less a Roman tradition and more a globalized imperial export. And just like that, football becomes the empire's most effective form of diplomacy. No legion required, just touchdowns. In modern football, the dark shadow is concussion. In Caesar's NFL, it's gladiatorial philosophy, glory bought with blood. This league does not shy away from violence, it ritualizes it. The brutal collisions are framed as echoes of battlefield valor. Helmet cracks are compared to shield wall clashes. Broken bones are sacrifices to Mars. But behind the chants and banners lies a darker reality. Injuries are frequent, careers short. The average player, called Milus Ludorum, or soldier of the game, is expected to serve with unflinching loyalty even as their bodies crumble. Medical care exists via Medici Ludorum, but it's rudimentary, bound by Roman-era beliefs. Concussions are treated with herbs, leeches, and vague talk of humors. A star running back suffering memory loss is said to be touched by the gods. Yet whispers grow. Scrolls emerge describing the long-term effects of repeated cranial trauma. Retired players wander the streets of Rome, confused, haunted, forgotten. The term morbus areni, or disease of the arena, spreads like wildfire. Caesar's regime attempts to suppress the conversation. Publicly, officials claim divine punishment. Privately, censors destroy scrolls. Physicians who speak out are sent to the provinces. But some persist. Radical thinkers, Stoics and skeptics alike, begin to question the ethics of the sport. Is this spectacle worth the sacrifice? A minor scandal erupts when a popular Centurion linebacker collapses mid-game. The crowd cheers, thinking it's performance. It's not. This section of Caesar's NFL reveals the empire's oldest tension between glory and decay, between what it celebrates and what it refuses to see. In modern football, cheerleaders are icons of energy and pageantry, often overlooked, often objectified. In Caesar's NFL, they are priestesses of Venus, symbols of divine beauty, civic pride, and controlled chaos. Yes, cheerleaders, but with daggers and doctrine. Each team employs a corps of Venere Ludi, women of the game. Trained in dance, rhetoric, and light combat, they perform not just to excite, but to sanctify. Their routines open matches with ritual blessings, mid-game chants to sway the gods, and choreographed dances derived from Etruscan war ceremonies. They are not just decorative, they are powerful. Some are mystics, others are spies, all are influencers. Their origin is tied to Caesar's broader gender reforms. While the battlefield remained male-dominated, the arena gave women a new domain, cultural command. A well-respected Venera Prima, the lead cheer priestess, might wield more public influence than a provincial governor. But tensions arise. Critics accuse the Venere of manipulating politics. Conspiracies spread about their role in match outcomes, that seductive rituals are swaying referees, even generals.
A scandal breaks when scrolls reveal a high-ranking Venera received gifts from 3 opposing team tribunes. Feminist philosophers, yes, they exist here, rise to defend them. Why fear women who speak in verse, asks one. Because their choreography is more coherent than Senate law, replies another. In this empire, even the sidelines are contested space. Gender isn't a footnote in Caesar's NFL, it's a battle of image, of ideology, of divine alignment. And the cheerleaders? They're not just part of the show, they are the show.
In our world, quarterbacks are stars. In Caesar's NFL, they're demigods, mortal conduits of divine will, ordained to command chaos. Every team revolves around its quarterback, or Praetor Maximus. He doesn't just throw the ball, he interprets the cosmos. Fans don't just follow him, they worship. Before games, each quarterback undergoes a sacred ritual, purification by fire and water, a ceremonial oath at the altar of Mercury, and anointing with oils blessed by the Flamen Ludi, the high priest of the sport. These aren't superstitions, they're part of the myth-making machine. The best quarterbacks achieve apotheosis, literal deification. After a record-breaking season, a QB might be declared a living god by senatorial decree. Statues erected, temples commissioned, a minor cult forms, complete with chants, candles, and game day sacrifices. Children are named after them. Coins are minted in their image. Pre-game speeches are dissected by philosophers, the way scholars once analyzed Cicero. But the burden of divinity is crushing. Quarterbacks who fall from grace, whether through injury, scandal, or poor performance, face a cruel fate. Their temples are torn down, their statues defaced, their cults disbanded. Apostasy spreads as quickly as fandom. One quarterback, once worshipped across 3 provinces, throws 6 interceptions in a high-stakes game. By morning, he's in exile, living alone in Crete, haunted by dreams of missed routes and angry gods. In Caesar's NFL, the quarterback is not a player. He is myth, he is martyr, he is message.
In modern football, referees enforce the rules. In Caesar's NFL, they divine the will of the gods. Meet the Augurs Ludorum, referees trained not in rule books, but in augury, omen interpretation, and ancient law. Their striped tunics are ceremonial robes, their whistles carved from sacred bone. Before every game, they perform ritual auspices, releasing birds, observing their flight paths, interpreting wind patterns and animal entrails. If the signs are unfavorable, the game is delayed, or worse, declared cursed. Every flag thrown on the field isn't just a penalty, it's a divine rebuke. Holding, the gods disapprove of your grasp. False start, Mercury frowns upon impatience. Roughing the passer, Mars demands restraint. Fans chant not for replays, but for redivinations. Coaches submit appeals not to a booth, but to a shrine midfield, placing tokens on an altar and requesting a second omen. Corruption is a divine offense. A ref who accepts a bribe risks damnatio memoriae, the total erasure of name and record. One infamous augur was caught favoring the team of his patron senator. He was publicly stripped of robes and his sacred staff broken before the crowd. But not all referees are fallible. Some are legendary, like the blind Sibyl of Etruria, who officiated 300 games without ever seeing the field. Her calls, delivered in verse, were never wrong. In this league, rules aren't enforced, they're revealed. The field is sacred space, the game a ritual. And the referees? Priests of balance, judges of chaos, keepers of fate.
Every empire sows the seeds of its own collapse. Caesar's NFL is no exception. It begins with a scandal, a disputed championship, marred by omens, injuries, and a controversial divination. Half the Senate declares the outcome void. Fans riot in the Circus Maximus. One team refuses to recognize the imperial trophy. Lines are drawn, provinces take sides, the league fractures. What follows is a football civil war, not metaphorical, but literal. Teams are militarized, coaches become generals, former teammates meet on bloodied fields, not for scrimmage, but for supremacy. Playbooks turn into war manuals, formations evolve into battlefield tactics. The Super Bowl is split in two, the Imperial Bowl in Rome and the Free League Bowl in Carthage. Each claims legitimacy, each accuses the other of heresy against the spirit of the game. Religious cults erupt around each faction. The cult of Mars backs the militaristic Free League. The cult of Jupiter favors tradition. Even minor gods are dragged into it. Discordia, Trivia, Janus. Amid the chaos, a rogue quarterback turned revolutionary declares himself commissar of the unwritten playbook. His manifesto argues that football must evolve beyond empire, beyond Rome, into a universal code of controlled conflict and moral balance. Some say Caesar foresaw this, that the league, like the republic, was always meant to fall, only to be reborn stronger. Eventually, after years of bloodshed and broken helmets, a fragile peace emerges. The league is reformed, not as Caesar's NFL, but the League of Civilized Nations. The game survives, but the empire does not.
The empire may have fallen, but its game endures. Centuries later, when archaeologists unearth the bones of stadiums and the mosaics of legendary matchups, they find more than relics. They find blueprints for something eerily familiar. A game of territory, of structure, of spectacle. It reemerges in fragmented forms. Rugby in the Isles, calcio in Florence, college football in America. But buried deep in each is a Roman heartbeat, the echo of Caesar's original vision, controlled warfare masquerading as sport. By the 20th century, the NFL rises again, not as a rebirth, but as a reinvention, unknowingly reenacting ancient rituals. Coin tosses mirror the drawing of omens, playbooks resemble legionary tactics, halftime shows echo imperial pageantry. Even the language remains: Blitz, formation, gridiron, words older than America, ideas older than modernity. And in the boardrooms of billion-dollar franchises, the spirit of the Senate lingers. Power, propaganda, and performance intertwine. The stadium is still a temple, the fans still citizens, the quarterback still a demigod. We like to think the NFL is ours, that it's modern, American, capitalist. But maybe, just maybe, we're all still living in Caesar's empire.